I'm here today with Melissa Johnson, one of our faithful Eye on Art crew members over the years. Melissa, about a year ago, you undertook a project to investigate the alternative art spaces in the Pioneer Valley. What got you interested in this project?
Primarily, I think the work that we were doing with Eye on Art at the time and going to artist studios, which is a different look into the art world, but for myself, I really wanted to see where you would go to see these different artists, or to see artists who might not be featured on the TV show, who would have to look for a place to show their art outside of some of the more popular galleries, say in Northampton or places like that. And also I was really curious to find out about what kind of places might show non-traditional art, to go with a non-traditional gallery, something outside of the usual paintings and sculpture and representational art that you might see.
What spaces did you choose to visit?
I visited the Canal Gallery in Holyoke. I visited the Sea Gallery in Springfield, and also Flywheel Art Space in East Hampton.
You mentioned the Canal Gallery, which is owned and operated by David Scher. Tell me a little bit about what you found when you visited that space.
The Canal Gallery, I think it's a real jewel actually in Holyoke, and being where it is. It's a fantastic space. It's a huge brick building, old mill building, right on the water, and it has kind of the best of both worlds. Not only is it a gallery, it's a large gallery, but it also has a huge amount of studio space. It has a lot of artists that do their work there in the building, and it's connected with the building that his business is in, so he's just sort of there all the time, which must be great for him.
He tried to support this gallery or supplement it by his, I think it was a wax covering kind of industrial business that his father had set up years ago.
Yeah, he still does that, and so he doesn't really take too much money in, I don't think, from the artistic endeavor. So it's just beneficial for everybody who's there, and it's real generous of him, really. It's more of a trade-off, I think, between himself and the artists than it is any kind of other money-making venture. So it's kind of unique in that way. It's sort of a haven, I think, for the people that do work there.
David's also been very involved with the arts in Holyoke. He's been a leader in the Art Walk in Holyoke and some of the projects with students.
Mm-hmm.
My name is David Scher, and I'm pretty much the director of the Canal Gallery. I'm also the owner of the building, and started the building as a community of artists almost 30 years ago. When I first came into the building, everything I pretty much did was in the furthermost corner. I was doing wax coating, and I'm still doing wax coating. That's my primary business. Then I began to convert the building into studio spaces or smaller spaces for people to work in, either to be artists or craftspeople. The big room came later. I didn't develop the upstairs until maybe 5-6 years ago, and the first use of the space was for Mother Tongue, which we have examples on the wall. It was a visual conversation that involved hundreds of artists who came from all over the valley, and they would each do a panel in response to a previous panel. And that whole room was filled with panels, and there were discussions. But the kind of outreach we're doing today, in terms of the community, has to do with bringing the children in and giving them an opportunity to be part of the Canal Walk planning, to throw some ideas at us, put ideas down on paper, maybe build models about what they think can happen in this part of the city over the next 10, 15 years. The space has other possibilities too. I would like to see big installations of sculpture or environments. And those that know the Canal Gallery, the space, will readily say that it's a unique space. It's a beautiful space. And the space itself is a masterpiece. The arches, the way the bricks are done, and the feeling that comes when you walk in the room. It could be almost anywhere in the world, you know. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like it's Holyoke. And that's what makes it even more interesting, because then people start to think about the building and other spaces in Holyoke. And if someone comes in with an idea and I like it, it doesn't matter that they're necessarily established, as long as I get a sense that they're serious. And that's how, when I rent the space, I usually have a conversation with people, and I look to see if they're serious. I don't always like the work when I rent the space, but and I don't always like the work when I have a show, but I believe what the artist is trying to do. Not everything that I show is necessarily something I would bring home or want to live with. Before I had a clear idea about what I was going to do with the building, one of the things that I felt was lacking was the presence of artists in the city. And at the time I lived just outside the city, up on a hill, and I would look into the city and I would think about the city and what it would mean to have an arts community. And I thought that was a good way to go, and I think I'm right. Because now there's a concerted effort to establish a larger arts community in the city of Holyoke. And
I'm David Teeple. I'm an artist. I'm in the Canal Gallery studio. And this is an exhibition of photographs that I've taken over the last 10 years. And I have quite a connection to this space. I've been in the building for about a little over 11 years. Probably about 8 years ago, I built this canal piece here, which is a steel piece that brings the canal, actually brings the water of the canal into the gallery space, to draw a reference to the conceptual reference to the canal and the relationship to the industrial community. The influence of the environment has been very strong, both artistically, aesthetically, and also just personally. All of my work now has to deal with, or deals with water, at least presently, although that's also shifting. But up till now, I've been drawing reference from the canals, from the rain. So I used to live in Tucson, where relationship to water is very different than it is here. So a lot of my sculptures, the influence has been quite strong. It's a really great place because there's, I don't know how many at this point, maybe 15 or 20 artists in the building, painters and sculptors, and a woman that does hand-painted silk, amongst other people. And so it's a real influential community in terms of just having some kind of camaraderie amongst ourselves, having people to talk to or bounce ideas off. So it's an unusual environment to be in artistically.
And then you also mentioned Larry Slezak at the Sea Gallery, which is an unusual location in an industrial area of Springfield, but he has a tremendous passion for art, and he tried combining that space with a cafe to help it work.
The Sea Gallery, I think, is the kind of place that a lot of people dream about opening. People who, when they get out of art school, or that just love art, it's a real dream space. It was designed very purposefully to just be a very user-friendly art space. And not only is he dedicated to the viewers that come in, to making it comfortable for them, but he's also very dedicated to the artists that come in and accommodating them, and not just getting well-known names from the area or seeking out, well-known international artists or anything like that. He's open to anybody who's out there, and he does get all different caliber artists.
Tell me a little bit about how you got this gallery started.
Well, when I first moved to Springfield, and I'm going to give you the long version, I was with a group of artists. We formed the Zone Art Center downtown Springfield, and a lot of the ideas that I felt were important to see happen in Springfield were happening with Zone. One of the downsides of what we did with Zone was we created a nonprofit organization, and the nonprofit was always subject to what the funding agencies were going to have available to you. You're always going around with your hat in your hand trying to get money to do the things. And it was primarily a volunteer effort from the artist standpoint, but I said if I ever got involved with a gallery situation again, that there would be some kind of a component that would make it more self-supporting, so you were not necessarily held to certain restrictions that the grants might put upon the money that you use, how you used it.
I know you have a mission in terms of letting community artists show their work here and perform here. So how do you select your artists?
Well, it's kind of a tricky thing because I think you have to, I believe you have to make yourself available for those artists that are really committed and dedicated to their work. So there is some judgment involved, and from my part, as to whether or not I think there's really a commitment artistically from the artists or individuals that would come here. We've done work both with traditional visual artists as well as performance artists, and there's one young group of young musicians who hadn't had an opportunity to present their material to not only their friends but members of the community, and we availed the space for them as well. It was a really wonderful experience because it drew people in from the immediate neighborhoods as well as gave these kids an opportunity to do a public performance. We certainly are not in any way having to solicit work because there's more than enough people out there who are in need of a place to show their work. I think that's one of the things that makes this exercise successful is the fact that there are no venues for artists who are somewhere in between being students, and I'm not precluding students either, but really there are no galleries in the city other than what we have at the Quadrangle, which is more sanctioned and institutionalized, and therefore not, I think, prepared to exhibit the kind of experimental things that we're doing.
Now you have a fascinating exhibit up by Alicia Renaudet, and tell me a little bit about this exhibit here.
Alicia is a graduate of the Hartford Art School. She's an artist that lives in Hartford, had been up here to see another artist's show, was taken by the space, taken by the concept, and sent in a proposal, and I love her work. I think what she's doing as a young female artist is tremendous, and I want to encourage people like that to continue to work, and by giving them an opportunity to show their work, I think it just gives them another bump, another notch on their artistic resume that they can continue to work and hopefully develop further.
Getting back to this gallery itself, one of the interesting points on the design that you were telling me about is how you have a movable wall so that you can actually change the gallery space depending on the type of exhibit that you have.
Right. Well, again, when we first came into the space in trying to define it, I kept resisting the idea of putting up walls because it just sort of locked us into a certain time and place, and I felt that there had to be a way that I could do this that would lend itself, lend the gallery to a more flexible environment, and also wanting to do more non-traditional artistic exercises like the performance art, like musical arts and so on, that by cutting the space in half with a wall, it would shrink the space that we had. So I designed the wall to be on huge industrial casters that we can then shift it around, open it up, make it a much larger performance space should we need it, and also just cause for just a little bit more of an interesting gallery space if we wanted to have angled walls and that sort of thing.
Right, and also there are some other cafes in the area that do hang art on their walls, but here you've really separated out a space that is gallery, so that it's perhaps giving the artwork a little more emphasis.
The artwork a little more emphasis, and again, I think I wanted to keep the integrity of the work intact. I didn't want it to be misconstrued as decoration for the cafe. And also, I think what happens is oftentimes when people walk into a gallery, if it's not work that they're ready for yet, or that they don't quite see yet, that they turn around and may never come back. Whereas here, they might come in for a cup of coffee one day and look around the corner and say, "Nah, I don't think I want to go in there right yet." And after a couple of cups of coffee, or maybe a couple of visits into the cafe to have lunch or what have you, they might feel more relaxed and more comfortable and be able to have some kind of interaction with the work that they wouldn't ordinarily have in a traditional gallery environment.
The third space that you visited is Flywheel, which is sort of an artist collaborative.
Yeah, it's very different from the other two spaces. Flywheel it's a very bohemian atmosphere. It's there for the community, and really not much else. It's to promote arts in the community, and it's to, everybody that works there is there to bring the community into the space and open them up to all different forms of art. They do have a gallery space to hang art, but they also have just tons of other things. They show films there, they have bands there, performance art, and they get a lot of traveling artists and traveling acts, but they also have the kids next door, literally, who just come in and hang out and take advantage of the space. And everybody that puts their time in there is equal. So it's nice. It's very refreshing.
Sure. Flywheel came out of a group called Valley Arts and Music Alliance, and that was started about 2 years ago. And that group focused on trying to expose people to art and music by having shows in places that were not already clubs, having music shows in galleries, any place really, and showing art and performance either on the street or in different galleries around here. And then about a year ago, more than a year ago, around this time in March, some people started talking, Helen and Cindy, December of '99, looking for an actual permanent space. And one of the women who was involved getting this space together, Sue Bartone, found this space, which used to be an old cabinet store, and the man who owns it is Dr. Kanazi, and he basically just donated the space to us. And for a year, since last February, we have been in here and constantly remodeling and making new space, and now we have a gallery, a performance space, a cafe, and we have a huge back room called the Vault, and that's where we've been and kind of where we are right now.
Things that sets Flywheel apart from many other art organizations, and also almost every business in the area, is that we're run entirely by volunteers. There's a staff of probably about
10?
15 to 20. Yeah, I guess 15 to 20 real dedicated. I guess you could almost call them like our central volunteers. And we have another dozen that are on the side that help run the place. We don't have anyone that gets paid at all, which means all the labor that goes into here is it's volunteer. Some of us have put in probably 30, 40 hours a week here, but we enjoy it, so. And it makes a big difference financially, too. Without having any salaries, we can, I think we have more freedom to take risks, on the shows.
And for a lot of folks, the time that is spent here, it's more the kind of time you would spend on their hobbies or things outside of your average salary day. So folks come here and work here after their jobs. They work here on weekends. The folks who operate the gallery are here because they're artists, but they also want to invest and create their own space. And the folks who do the music are interested in running that and seeing that happen out of their own interests. And So everyone kind of coalesces around their interests, and that's how we get as many volunteers and as much interest as we do.
So through the years that we found all these people just started kind of coming in through the door, and we've got so much talent here that we don't know what to do with it, because now everybody just everybody that doesn't like I don't know how to do half the things that Mike does, but Mike does them all. Half the things that what's your name, Aaron does, but Aaron I can do things that other people can't do, and everybody just seems to I think everybody here just melds together and does everything that needs to get done, and things happen. I mean, I think it's really important also to have a place for people to be able to express themselves. I know a lot of people that have come through our doors, or people that I have met that really have never played music or played drums or even know waveforms of expression, how to release energy and stuff like that. And there's just one person I know now that's in a band, and they practice twice a week, and they're playing tonight, and so many people that have come through here have just really taken upon themselves to start projects. And I could use me for an example. I'm doing all these projects now, stuff that I would have never thought of doing 2 years ago if I wasn't introduced to this noise and experimental stuff that's happening here. I mean, it's just all a form of expression. It's not good or bad. It doesn't have to be censored. It's just how somebody expresses themselves. And I don't think that there's enough acceptance that goes on in our society for that type of expression. So,
we try to get a combination of both local artists, local musicians. We've had many high school bands playing their first show ever, outside of their garage that played here at Flywheel. But we also get people from across the country and even around the world. Just this past Monday, we had a band from Japan called High Rise play, and the space was packed. Two days earlier, we had some local bands who'd never really, played for anyone before. So it's a combination. We try to be open to any local artists because there's not many other places to play in Western Mass. So I think every community would benefit from having an art space that is open to kids age 10 and everyone ranging age from 10 to about 80. I know in Northampton, there's a lot of places to play music, but it's quite limited as to what you can actually do and who can actually go to it. I know the Calvin, I don't think any shows cost less than about $30, so the entire part of the population can't even step in the door there, except for $1 movie night.
And right now it feels good to have, I guess, to be the only, right now we are sort of the only space where there is kind of a full community access. So it would be nice to see, like Mike said, that every community has something more available in terms of just a place for the community to come see stuff, but also just be there for folks, not trying to do more than I guess it can.
I think it's largely up to the community to determine how we grow and in what fashion, because we want to be a community art space to allow the community to, in a way, dictate what we do instead of just having us permit it. We have to find out what the community needs are. Maybe we're suiting them here, maybe we're not.
Melissa, besides these three galleries, there's a number of restaurants like Green Street Cafe and Caffeines that allow artists to hang works. There's public spaces at Bay State Medical Center and now the Valley Portfolio downtown at Tower Square. So these are some new things. Another new option for artists is to exhibit their works online.
Yeah, internet obviously is a huge benefit to artists, particularly emerging artists or hobby artists. People who, it's a real part-time thing for them. It's a benefit not only because you can get hit on by anybody out there, but it's also it's maybe it feels less risky to people who may not have quite as much confidence that they can put their work online. They don't have to meet people face to face. People can key in and give their own critique, and they can just read it. And I think that's a terrific thing. And then maybe from there they can go on to the restaurants or the hospitals, which have terrific foot traffic that just get people in and out all day long to really see their work. But the two of those together, are a great combination for somebody who may not want to go ahead and approach a gallery. And the nice thing about the internet opportunity is that a lot of sites on the internet for artists are not just galleries. In particular, Mines Island, that was started out of Springfield. It's not just a gallery, it's not just a place for artists to put their work up, but it offers all kinds of services. It's not just a chat, which every site has, but you can actually get peer critiques, you can get
buy
professional critiques, buy
supplies, right.
all kinds of things. It's a one-stop internet just, for the artist, and that's terrific. So.
It's a whole new world, but here we are again a year later, and I think the 3 galleries that you visited also tried a novel approach. Each one took a little different approach, and unfortunately, the Sea Gallery didn't make it, but the other 2 are still active. And so what are your thoughts a year later?
Overall, I think that it's when a person or a group sets out to have that kind of an art space that is not commercial, it's not profit driven. You have to be really careful about your format, and you have to be especially careful about the space that you choose, the location that you choose. Sea Gallery was a beautiful space, really unique, but it was not in a popular area. Most of the traffic that goes down Gasoline Alley are trucks. It's a very industrial area.
Yes.
So, not that the canal area is not industrial, but that's turning over. So, you really do have to be careful about where you are and what you want back from the community that you're in. It's tricky, and as much as Larry Slezak tried to not have his cafe overshadow the art, well, if you have food and if you have a restaurant that's successful, you're always going to have people in there.
Right.
So it's a fine line. And there's a huge interest in non-traditional art and non-traditional spaces, and then I think there's enough support out there for it, but the community and the location itself really needs to be able to support it.
It's a whole new world, but here we are again a year later, and I think the 3 galleries that you visited also tried a novel approach. Each one took a little different approach, and unfortunately, the Sea Gallery didn't make it, but the other 2 are still active. And so what are your thoughts a year later?
Revitalization in itself is really important to the growth of an artistic community. Holyoke is an example of that, and what David Scher is doing. And Springfield too, there are other kinds of spaces popping up. And who knows, maybe Larry Slezak can start the Zone space up again. I mean, if only that was still open, it was the perfect spot, so who knows, maybe he'll get that back and going again. That would be great.
I think when you talk about community, that's an excellent point. And, I think it's almost a reflection of how cities themselves can change. The last few years in Springfield has seen a big revitalization of the Worthington Street area. And so areas like this, which become very popular and well-trafficked, become potential spaces. And I think the fact that these galleries are there and new ones are popping up shows that Springfield is an area with artistic talent and also an artistic audience that's willing to visit these spaces, and you just have to find the right location and the right mix of other essentials to make it a working space. And of course, Melissa, making a plug here for Iron Art, I have to say I've really enjoyed working with you and the other crew members of Iron Art over the last 2 or 3 years. And we've had a chance to visit painters, sculptors, musicians, comedians, galleries, and I hope that our audience will take advantage not just of our show, but of public access cable TV in general as a medium to express their ideas, whether they're artistic or otherwise. Public access cable TV is just a wonderful medium to get involved with.
Yeah, it's great to get involved with. not just in the studios, but also it's a different way of experiencing the area around you. You know, for people who do watch Ion Art, it's not you know, it's not a network kind of a thing. You know, it's a show that's brought to you by your neighbors. It's your neighbors saying, hey, you know, this is the kind of thing that's going on in your area, and it's in earnest. And I hope that that would attract people and kind of draw people in, just to get a real down-to-earth view of what kind of things are going on.
Melissa, I want to thank you again for showing our viewers a fascinating look at some of these non-traditional spaces. I think that these emerging artists can be very happy that these spaces exist in the Pioneer Valley, and I hope that the viewing public will go out after having seen this show and try to experience some of these firsthand. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.